Y'all go ahead and stop your side conversation, please. Midpoint, you touched on in Algebra 1. So this hopefully kind of rings a bell, sounds familiar. You've heard the word. You've actually found midpoint in algebra, but I know it's probably been a while. So let's review this. In the coordinate plane, okay, the coordinate of the midpoint between two endpoints of a segment, okay, so x1, y1, x2, y2, those are your endpoints, okay, it is the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. So it's set up, it's written as a coordinate pair. You've got a open parenthesis, average of the x's, comma, average of the y's, close parentheses, because we're finding the coordinates of a point, okay? So the formula is just the average. You're adding the two x's of the endpoints, dividing by 2. Adding the two y's of the endpoints, dividing by 2. Okay, so that is algebraically what you're going to do to solve. Okay, but I'm also going to show you when you're on the coordinate plane. Some of you prefer like counting vertical and horizontal distances, and you can do that as well. Okay, so in this first example, it says that QS, segment QS, has an endpoint at 3, 5. So we're going to plot that. So 3, 5 is point Q. And then S is at 7, -9. So we're going to plot a point at 7, -9. Okay, and we're going to find the coordinates of the midpoint. So if you want to connect these and draw the segment, you can do that. And we're looking for the very middle point of that segment. Okay, a point halfway down from one endpoint or the other. So algebraically, what that looks like is I write my formula, which is just the average of the x's and the y's. So I take the x and y of Q are 3 and 5. And the x and y of S are 7 and -9. Now, it does not matter which order I write those because it's addition, right? As long as it's both the x's together and both the y's together. I could have said 7 plus 3. I could have said -9 plus 5. Because it's addition, the order doesn't matter. As long as you're grouping the correct coordinates, the x's together, the y's together. Okay, so then you calculate, and 7 plus 3 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. And -5 plus -9 is -4, divided by 2 is -2. So my midpoint should be at 5, -2. So if we go plot that, make sure that it looks reasonable. Does that look like it's halfway?
Yes.
Sure does.
Woohoo!
Okay. That's easy, right?
So easy.
So easy. Good. Okay. Now, let's try again. Let's try with example 2. CD has endpoints at -2, 12. And 10, -4. And we are looking for the coordinates of the midpoint. So this time I'm going to show you a method you could try instead of using the formula. You could count your horizontal and vertical distance from endpoint to endpoint. So what I'm saying is, if I were to count how far apart these points are vertically and horizontally, I could count that, okay? And so if I counted from 12 to -4, that's 16, isn't it? So that would be down 16. And then from -2 to 10, that would be over 12. So if I want to go halfway, what do you think I could do with those numbers? Cut them in half. Good. So I would go down 8. Would put me here. And over 6 would put me here. And then I could get the coordinates that way. And that is at 4, 4. And I could have done it from here. I could have come 8 back this way. Sorry, 6 back this way and up 8. It doesn't matter which endpoint you count from if you're going half. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to put a note. You can count on your graph the vertical and horizontal distance and cut in half. Find midpoint. Now, I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but I just want you to know you can. Some people are more visual and they prefer to look at the graph and do something like that. Now, the thing is, if these vertical and horizontal distances that we counted, what if they weren't even numbers and they didn't evenly split in half? Our midpoint would be at a half, right? So just know that it may not be, your midpoint doesn't have to be at integer values. Your midpoint could be at like 3.5, 4.5 or something.
Like 6.
Yeah, like let's say like that had been 15 instead of 16. Okay, when I cut the 15 in half, I would go down 7.5. So my y value would be at a half instead of at an integer. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, easy enough? All right, now using a midpoint formula to find the missing endpoint. So this is going backward. Okay, so this time we're given the midpoint. We're told the midpoint is 3, 4, and then we're given one of the endpoints. Okay, so graphically, I can do this by plotting those points and do the same thing in reverse of what I just did. Instead of cutting the vertical and horizontal distance in half, I would double it, right? Because I would be going that much further from the midpoint. So graphically, it would look like this. A is at -3, -2. And the midpoint is at +3, +4. So I could count how far up and over I went and then just do it again. So I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I went up 6 over 6. So do it again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that would be my other endpoint, which would be at 9, 10. So graphically, I can find the other midpoint that way by counting vertical and horizontal distances. Okay, algebraically, I use the same formula, okay, and I just work backward because the x of the midpoint is just the average of your two endpoints, right? Okay, that subscript m is for midpoint. So to find the x of the midpoint, I could plug in what I know and work backward. Okay. So I I didn't even look at what these steps, the way they're written out, if I'm writing in the right spot. Let me read this a sec. So plug in everything given. Yeah, so, and then set the coordinate on the left equal to the coordinate equation on the right. Do this for the y coordinate also. So when I plug in, I would know the midpoint x is 3. And the endpoint x that I know is -3, right? So I would just work this backward. And to solve this, I would first have to multiply the 2 to the other side, right? Get rid of the denominator. So then I would have 6 equals -3 plus, and you could drop the subscript since there's only one x now, if you wanted to. And then I would add the 3 to the other side. And I got 9. Isn't that the same x value we got counting on the graph? Okay. And then you would have to do the same thing for y. So we would have to say, okay, the y of the midpoint is found by doing, oops, not x. The y of the midpoint is found by finding the average of the y's. So when I were to, if I was to plug in here for the y's, the y value of the endpoint we know is -2, and the y value of the midpoint is 4. And I would work this backward the same way I did for the x's. And so I would multiply the 2 to the other side. Would add the constant 2. And I would get 10, which is also what I got by counting. Okay. So you get the same 9, 10, whichever way you do it.
What way do you recommend?
Whatever you prefer. You get
The first way.
if you have a grid, like some of y'all don't like plotting points or graphing and you just want to do the algebra. Fantastic. Do it. Okay. But some of you, like if you're given a grid, why not just plot the point?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's up to you. All right, so last one, this one, they give us the midpoint again, and they give us one of the endpoints and ask for the other. So this is the same as the last one. So y'all take a second and try whichever method you prefer that I just showed you for working backward. Try either graph it or do the algebra or do both if you want to practice both for the sake of your notes. Okay, I'm going to give you a sec to try that. I'm going to get attendance while you're trying it, and then we'll check.
Yeah, I know.
All right, let's take a look. I think that's enough time. Y'all should have been able to do it, whether you were doing graphically or algebraically. So I'm going to plot the midpoint at 4, -6. And the endpoint that we're given is 2, -3. Okay, so I'm going to go from endpoint to midpoint. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So down 3. over 2. So that puts the other endpoint at 6, negative 9.
So we wouldn't go up?
Now, very good question.
Yeah.
That is the one downfall, or like the most common mistake doing it graphically, is going the wrong direction. Because you have to make sure you label the midpoint as the midpoint needs to be in the middle. Okay, if I went from green to red and then in that direction from red, the green is no longer the midpoint, the red is.
You're so
Okay, so you have to make sure you're paying attention to which of the points given is the middle and which is an end point. Okay, so that is a common mistake that people make doing it graphically, is going in the wrong direction. Okay, now you could have done this algebraically and you should have gotten the same thing. Does anybody need me to go over it algebraically? Okay, so I'm going to go activate y'all's practice. Y'all can go ahead and get your laptops out.